Tell us about your recent stories, the one that you wrote for The Nation on FBI tracking you. And so maybe a bit of that. And then you can follow up with the 9/11 story that you're drafting for us.
Okay, yeah. There's two stories I did for The Nation recently that I write for them a bunch as a not as a contributing editor, but as a regular contributor. I did a cover story for them that came out in December of 2018. It was a long assignment I did that they paid me quite well for as a cover story. It's like unusual for The Nation. They came up with $5,000 for a piece I proposed on the, there were these numbers coming out in sort of the alternative media saying that the Pentagon had $21 trillion more than it was budgeted. And, people were thinking that it was, manufactured money from the Fed or something, and that the Pentagon was getting much more money than we knew. And I thought that's crazy, but and the reason I thought it was crazy is that if there was $25 trillion, even if it was being printed by the Treasury without any backing, if that money was being pumped into the economy, we never would have had a recession. We would have had massive inflation, and none of that was true. So we had a terrible recession from 2009 until, some people would say it never stopped because we've had massive unemployment ever since then. So I really doubted that, but it turned out that there really were these numbers, $21 trillion in the budget of the Pentagon that had no basis in fact. And so I said I wanted to do an article explaining it. And what it came up with was with named sources inside the Pentagon and inside the General Accounting Office that the Pentagon was making up the numbers so that Congress never knew how much it actually spent each year. And then the Pentagon comes in every year with a request for more money, and they can't even show what they did with the money they got the year before. So it wasn't really that they're getting $21 trillion that wasn't budgeted, wasn't allocated to them by Congress. It's that Congress isn't doing its job and demanding that the Pentagon explain what it did with the money each year before giving them more money. And so their budget keeps going up and up and up. Now, right now, they are spending more this year than they ever spent in constant dollars since World War II, when the country was fully mobilized in a world war. And right now, we really aren't in any wars. We do a lot of military activity around the world with drones and things like that, but that's not a lot of money. So there's no justification for $1.3 trillion being devoted to military in the US. It's an insane number every year. And it could be getting put to much better use than having, what is it, 1,000,003.3 or 2, I guess with reservists, it's about 2 million soldiers. It's insane. No country threatens the United States. And we're spending all this money on the military without any question. So anyway, I did that story, and I showed that they were committing this massive accounting fraud for over the last 20 years. And then 3 months later, I went on a flight to Vienna with my wife, who's a world-known harpsichordist and early keyboard player, and she had a concert on Vienna State Radio. So I thought, I like to travel with my wife because all I have to do is pay the airfare for my seat, and then she gets the hotel, and she gets a per diem that we eat in cheap restaurants. So when she gets a per diem, we both eat on it and don't spend it all. So it's a free trip for me, basically, and I usually get a story out of it. But the story I got out of this one was not one I expected. I tried to get my boarding pass with my wife on the night before we flew to Vienna, and I couldn't get mine. She got her seat assignment. I couldn't do it because it said I had to get my boarding pass at the airport. No explanation. I just thought, oh, there's a glitch in the system. So I went to the airport early and I got my boarding pass and everything was fine. Flew through Heathrow, got to Vienna on time. Everything was great. We spent a week, and then coming home, the night before, I tried to get my boarding pass again in Vienna, and the same thing happened. My wife got her boarding pass to both the domestic flight to Vienna and to Heathrow, and then, transatlantic flight, and I couldn't get it. So I had to go to the Vienna airport early and get it at the ticket booth. So I went to the ticket counter and I got my boarding pass, and the two of them, and we flew off to Heathrow. Everything was fine. And then we went to lunch because it was a long break to get our flight to I guess it was Philadelphia. And while we're eating our lunch in the middle of the lobby at this restaurant, there's this announcement over the whole PA system for the international terminal. Mr. Lindorff, please go to your gate early for a special security check. And, we looked at each other and said, what's this about? So we got our carry-on bags and went walking down this long wing of the terminal and got to the end of it where our gate was. Nobody was there yet. And I said, it's Dave Lindorff, I'm here for a security check. And the guy at the turnstile, it says, Lindorff's here. And then he tells me to come on in and go downstairs at the gate. So my wife says, I'm going with him. And he said, you can go, ma'am. And she thought I was going to get hauled off to Guantanamo. So we go downstairs and there's two security guys standing behind metal tables, and like they have at the vet, to put your animal on, and like surgical tables. And they said, it looked pretty imposing, and then they said, Mr. Lindorff, put your bag and your computer and your cell phone on the table and turn them on. So I did. And they ran this machine over them that looked like it was out of a 1950s B scientific movie, with blinking lights on them. And I said, what are you doing? And they said, this is checking you for your bags and your equipment for explosives, sir. So I said, really? You think that a 70-year-old guy with, with his wife with him and, born in America is a terrorist? And the guy says, we don't think you're a terrorist, sir, but your government might. So they checked the stuff and then they said, okay, you're free to board early, sir. So I'm about to go, and my wife, bless her heart, she says, how do you know that that I'm not carrying the explosives in my carry-on bag? It's identical to my husband's. And the guy looks at her and he says, ma'am, we were asked to check out your husband, not you. Board the plane. So so I said, oh, I get it. This isn't really about the security of the airline. It's harassing me. And that's because I'm a journalist, right? And the guy says, we know you have a lot of problems in your country, sir. So I go and board the plane, and I didn't do much about it, but I thought it was funny. And then in May, I went to London to work on a film project that I'm doing that's going to be out in the spring, a documentary film about the youngest spy in the Manhattan Project, 18-year-old guy who became a Soviet spy and helped the Russians get the bomb 4 years early. And I was interviewing his widow, who was in Cambridge, 92 years old, no, 91 years old at the time. And coming back with my son, who was the second camera on the project, we went to Heathrow. And I couldn't get my boarding pass. So I said to my son, we better get there really early because this is another one of these cases. And so I went to the desk counter and I got my boarding pass, and it had 4 S's on it. So I said in bold, in top corner, alternate top corners. So I said to the woman who issued the tickets, what are these S's for on my boarding pass? They're not on my son's. And she said, oh, you're on a list, sir. So I said, oh, okay, I know all about that. So So we went to our gate, and the same thing happened. They called me up to the desk and they said, you have to do a special security check. Same deal. Went in through a door behind the desk at the gate. Same two kinds of tables and different security guys. And they went through all my stuff again. And this time they told us they told my son to put his stuff on the desk. And I said, no, he doesn't have to put his stuff on the desk. He doesn't have any S's on his boarding pass. And the guy said, oh, okay. So he can sit over there. So Jed goes and sits down with his camera equipment and waits. And then when we're leaving, and they told me I could go, after they wiped my hands for explosives and wiped this time it was wiping the stuff. Then I said, how come you don't know, you're letting us go, but you don't know whether my son has the bomb? And the guy laughed and said, don't give me a hard time. He said, you're fine. We only have to check you. Get on the plane. So the second time it was the same thing. When I got back, I called the Homeland Security Department and talked to the press guy and said, what's going on here? Why am I having this happen? And he said, well, you must be on a terrorism watch list. And I said, really? There's more than one? And he said, yeah, there's 3, maybe 4, run by the FBI. And I can't tell you if you're on it, but it sounds like it. And and I said, so I can't get off it because I can't find out who put me on it. He said, some federal agency reported you. So I think it's the Pentagon. I think they were really, really pissed off at me for doing that article. And I think they just figured, screw them, put them on the terrorist watch list. So now I'm about to have a lawsuit against the Pentagon and the FBI for putting me on a terrorism watch list, and we'll see what happens. I have a pro bono attorney from a big Washington law firm who's taken it on for no charge. So we'll see where that goes. So
that's a relief. That's a relief that you have a pro bono lawyer. Otherwise, you'd have to sell something from your assets.
Yeah, well, I did an article on it for The Nation. I said I'm a journalist, but the government thinks I'm a terrorist. And I just figured the best way to deal with it was to be, brazen about it. But it's actually very, you think it's funny until you realize that that list is provided to every police department in the country. They can access it. I talked to my cousin who was a detective in the Phoenix police, and he said, oh yeah, when you do a make on somebody, you get that list. And so if you stop somebody and they're on that list, you know it. And so I said, well, so in other words, if I got some young cop who was really gung-ho and did a full make on me on a traffic stop, he could come up with that I'm a terrorist and suspected terrorist. And then my traffic stop could turn into something very different than a traffic stop, and pretty scary. So yeah, especially it would be much worse if I was a black guy or Hispanic or something, but or had a Arab name. But at any rate, it's not a pleasant thought. So I keep my attorney's number on my cell phone in case I get a traffic stop and wind up in jail. So, I have his home cell phone. So
okay, thank you, Dave. That was riveting and worrying, and also most interesting that challenging the Pentagon or its numbers can lead you to be marked in such a manner at airports, at local law enforcement apparatus starts harassing you and targeting you. So let's jump to your current 9/11 draft that you're working on, and I'd like you to maybe speak just a few minutes, and then we'll ask our students to ask you.
Yeah.
Please.
Well, yeah, you told me you wanted a piece on 9/11. And I started thinking about it, and it's really that this is an incident that happened before you guys can remember it. Maybe before you were born, some of you. It's been 20 years now, and when it happened, everybody in the media was saying, this has changed everything. 9/11 has changed everything, right? And they really acted like that. The government acted that way. The police act that way. The politicians are acting that way. Everybody acts like the world has changed because that happened. Well, first of all, the United States had never been attacked before except for 1812, right? When the British burned down Washington.
Mm-hmm.
Since then, this country has never been attacked. And I mean, you can't count Pearl Harbor because Hawaii was a colony when it was attacked. Some US ships were attacked, but the United States itself was not attacked. And so the question is, why are we treating this attack like something extraordinary? The rest of the world has had attacks. They've had huge bombings, lots of bombings, more people than died in 9/11. If you add them up, like just in England from the IRA, they've had so many of these kinds of terrorism attacks. And in Europe, in Spain, they've had hundreds of people killed in train station bombings and things. And they don't flip out and say, oh my God, the world is after us. We have to get rid of all our rights and everything. But in this country, it became an excuse for attacking two countries that had nothing to do with 9/11, Afghanistan and Iraq. And also most dangerously for launching what was called the War on Terror, which I don't know whether you're aware of this, but the War on Terror has been defined by the courts as being a borderless war that includes the entire globe, including the United States. Everywhere is a battleground in the War on Terror. And because of that, they've said that the president is essentially a dictator as long as that act is in effect, and it's still in effect. Even though people thought when it was passed that it was to enable the US to go after Al-Qaeda, they long ago gave up going after Al-Qaeda. They gave up before they even caught them. They had them surrounded in a mountain in the Tora Bora, and then they pulled the troops out and sent them to Kuwait because they wanted to invade Iraq. And they forgot about the Al-Qaeda completely, and the Al-Qaeda all escaped to, including Osama bin Laden, to Pakistan, and for 10 years was operating out of Pakistan, plus opening up new branches around, in Iraq and other countries. And so they really didn't care about Al-Qaeda. They used the 9/11 situation to justify passing, first of all, starting this War on Terror that gives the president special powers and diminishes the powers of Congress. And they used it to pass something called the Patriot Act. And the Patriot Act basically guts the Constitution by expanding the role of the executive way beyond what the founding fathers ever imagined would be allowed. And they used it to gut the Bill of Rights. They arrest people and hold them indefinitely without charge, mostly at Guantanamo. Most of those people have never been charged with anything, not much less tried. And probably most of them never had anything to do with terrorism, but were reported as a terrorist by some neighbor who had a grudge against them and thought a great way to get rid of them was to tell US troops that this guy's a terrorist. And that's where they wind up, in Guantanamo. So we have this situation where NSA has become a monolithic spying agency that monitors all our communications and our emails, our phones, everything is monitored or can be monitored. And even I went out of my house one time and an SUV came up and followed me all the way to the bank about 5 miles away before turning away. And when I came home, I told my son about it, and he said, "Oh, I used to see those parked on the other side of the trees in the church parking lot facing our house." And I said, "What? You never told me that?" And he said, "No, I didn't think it was important." But so they're using these these devices that mimic a cell tower so that they can suck all your phone conversations through them, and then it goes out to wherever, you know. Police departments are all using those now, and the feds. This must have been a federal vehicle. It was an unmarked black SUV with a guy in a white shirt, button-down shirt, riding in it. So this is the life you lead as a journalist now, being spied on by the feds, some agency, I have no idea what agency, get listed on terrorist watch lists for doing your journalism. You know, if you meet with the wrong people, like any of you, if you sit and converse with me, could be linked to someone on a terrorism watch list and then be on it yourself. So that's the kind of country we've become because of 9/11. So, you know, I just wanted to look at that and think about what it is that actually changed. And what really changed is, first of all, the media has not been doing its job. It has not questioned from the beginning the idea that we need to have spying. Look, the media is treating Julian Assange as a monster who rapes women and exposes spies, you know, American spies who could be killed. Well, what he really did was expose American war crimes in Iraq and Afghanistan. And he's applied all these stories to the Times and the Washington Post and stuff, which they made first, you know, banner headline front page stories out of, and then they condemn him for what he does. It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
So this is what the 9/11 did, is it completely made people so terrified of terrorism that they were willing to give up all the freedoms that we've had for 200 years. Ben Franklin is said to have stated that when there were efforts to have the first anti-sedition law, he said, people seem to be willing to give up their some liberty for safety, but they're going to end up with neither.
Mm.
And that's basically what we've done. You know, we've given up our freedom for supposed safety, but we're not any safer, and we've lost a lot of freedom. And that's basically what this article, it isn't all written there. I haven't gotten that far, but I wanted to start with my friend and the cop, you know, Alex. So
right.
I thought
So
you
Dave,
might find that interesting.
Yeah, that's great, Dave. So looking at the time, I just want to now open it up to students if they have any questions about your earlier story, this story, or any general question about your career or a career in media.
Sure.
Okay. So any questions? Okay, yes. Introduce yourself as well.
Hi, my name is Linus Dental. I have to lean forward. I'm the guy leaning forward in the hat. And I'm, like many people in this room, an aspiring journalist. And I was just wondering, what do you know now in your life that you wish you had known when you started out?
I keep finding stuff out. I guess when I started out, I thought that there were a lot of people in government who wanted to do the right thing, and that there were, you know, corrupt people who wanted to do the wrong thing. You know, I looked at, and maybe it was true. You know, there were people like Ron Dellums and you know, Bella Abzug and stuff who were not in politics to make money or to rise in power, to be more powerful people than what they were, you know, as members of Congress. And then, you know, and then there were real scumbags who were profiteering and bribing and, you know, things like that, as always happens with politics. But there were good people, and you could appeal to them, and you could, you know, they got in the news, you could make change, it felt like, if you got those people on board on when you were breaking stories and things like that. But I've come to a conclusion now that our political system is totally corrupt, and maybe it was more corrupt than I thought it was back then, but I'm clearly aware now that it's totally corrupt. It's totally about money, them making money, getting money from corporate sponsors and things, and secret money that you can't really tell who's getting the money and what they're paying for. And I mean, there was one study I read that said that only 1% of the legislation passed by Congress has any beneficial effect for people and supports things that are commonly wanted. And most of the things that polls show people want, like national health care, a better retirement system, a smaller military budget, and all of these things never happen because Congress doesn't do what the public wants.
Right. I hope that addressed your question. Okay, anyone else wants to go? Feel free. Any general question if you want to ask? Yes. Introduce yourself as well.
Hi, I'm Desiree Holtz. I was just, that's me right here if you can see me. But you talked about how you do a lot of work with freelancing. How would you describe the freelancing landscape today? Do you feel like I think it's more like from what I'm hearing, it's more popular among like recent grads than getting like the traditional 9-to-5 beat reporter job? Like what are your thoughts on freelancing in general?
Well, it's hard to make a living freelancing because when I started freelancing, it was around 1979, and I did a lot of writing for the financial press because there were a lot of them and they paid pretty well, and I knew a lot about finance and economics, and I did pretty well for a while. And then what I discovered is that as inflation has gone up, the rates that magazines have been paying have been not only not going up, but they've actually been declining. And a lot of the places that paid well have folded, or have sort of gone into a state where they don't have any money anymore. So the best payments I've gotten now have been when I've gotten grants from like the Fund for Investigative Journalism and things like that to subsidize what I do. I was amazed when I got this movie producer role about the spy Ted Hall. I got a call from the co-producer and he said, I'm drawing up the budget because we're applying to Participant Films to buy this project and fund it all, and I need to lay out what our expenses are. He said, I have to ask you how much because it was my idea, the film, and I'm the reporter on it, and my title is co-producer with him. And he said, what would you need over the next year as co-producer? And I thought about it and I said, I'm not a greedy person. I just said, I guess maybe like $50,000. That would be, a little less than $5,000 a month. And he said, wow, that's the first time I ever got an answer like that. And I didn't know what he meant. He said, that's all you need? And I said, yeah, that's fine. And so that's what he said, well, that's what I'm going to get then too. And he said, if we don't get the grant, and these documentary films don't make a lot of money, so we might not. And so if we have to take a haircut, I'll take it first, and you'll get your 50,000. So I thought that was really, when I read about the movie business being cutthroat, this one wasn't. And it's a great director, Stephen James, who did Hoop Dreams and Abacus, Small Enough to Fail, and Chicago City So Real. He's won a Academy Awards and stuff. And they're just really sweet guys, and they're not greedy, and they want to do good films. And so this is going to be a good film. But that's decent money. You know, that's where the money is. Newspapers and magazines, man, they're all dying. So so it's hard, you know, and the online places seem to think that because people are reading them for nothing, that they should pay you nothing, you know, for writing for them. So
Correct.
it's a bad model.
Okay. Yes, Zara.
Hi, I'm Zara. First of all, I really like your shirt. It's a cool shirt.
Oh, okay.
My question is, what pushes you to the next story? And what's the method that you follow? Is it different for every story? And what's your approach?
Wait, ask that again, that last part.
What's your approach to the story and how do you seek it out? What's the method like for you?
Every story is different.
Yeah.
You know, if the story interests me, it's usually because it's either something people don't know about that I think they need to know about, or there's some misreporting on it and I need to correct it. Or, you know, like with 9/11, I think there's a great misunderstanding about 9/11. And we still don't know what the hell happened in 9/11. That's another issue, which I'd be happy to talk about. But you know, it's just each thing. And sometimes I just stumble in something, like when I got on the terror watch list, but then it's like, okay, I'll write about that, you know. And then you have to find a place. What I did, I founded a collectively run news site called thiscan'tbehappening.net, which is 6 journalists who all have the same kind of frustration with the corporate media that I do. And we decided to just start our own website where we can publish exactly what we want to publish, don't have any editors, just each other. And so we put it out there. We don't get paid anything because we depend on donations, and we don't even get $1,000 donations a year. So we just publish, and then we let people steal it and run it elsewhere. So I think I'm getting read more now than I was when I was writing for paid publications, because so many places run it and people read it.
Great. Yes, go introduce yourself.
Hi, my name is Erez Zabrowski. I'm also a freelancer. I'm an American Israeli. I've worked in both East Africa and the Middle East exclusively. I wanted to ask you a more personal question. And this is a question I really love to ask fellow freelancers whenever I can, especially looking at the laundry list of things that you cover, which are very serious and also, from journalist to journalist, incredibly taxing subjects. And I wanted to ask you, what keeps you going? Because the fight that you are fighting as a freelancer without corporate support is, as I understand, an incredibly difficult one. I have ambitions to be a war correspondent, and I have been in a civil war in Burundi and also a war in Israel. And I have seen the sheer adversity our colleagues face when we don't have a conscripted lawyer from our company, or we don't have the insurance that we need. And these are just small details. The turnaway and the feeling of rejection and difficulty is immense. So what I wanted to know from you is what keeps you going? Because this is an incredibly impressive list of subjects that you are covering.
Well, first of all, let me say that I have enormous admiration for you for covering wars. I have made a specialty of never covering a war. I have no interest in being a war correspondent. I mean, I just don't want to be shot at. And I've done things that have been risky, but not like that. I mean, that's where you can't even protect yourself, really. You're just sort of rolling the dice and hoping for the best. But What keeps me going is a righteous anger and passion for getting the truth out, and that, you know, it ain't money, but I just, you know, I get a great deal of satisfaction out of blowing the lid off something, and you know, then later I think, well, what the hell did that accomplish? You know, because it usually doesn't accomplish anything. So I try to keep that out of my mind while I'm angry about it and do it. And then, you know, I have to face that reality afterwards that it doesn't change much.
Thank you very much.
The key word is passion. So that's so true of journalism. If you want to, you know, you need to have that for, you know, as you asked, what keeps you going. And I think that's what, in Dave's case and in most cases, it's your passion, right? Not so much money. Or so Dave, you know, we are just almost out of time, but I have one last question, since I think all questions have been taken. So you did mention the role of media in post 9/11 context, in the sense that how the world's largest surveillance system was put into place, right? Spying on Americans, spying on, while ostensibly the attackers at 9/11 were outsiders, you know, but those who are being spied upon are people of America, right? And do you think, how far has media enabled that to happen? That is what I mean, I know, yes, it played a role, but I personally see that the media has played an enormous role in facilitating this surveillance architecture.
Well, you can look at let's just use a concrete example. Let's talk about the departure from Afghanistan that Biden has done. You know, to his credit, you know, like I don't think that there's any good way to leave, and he should have left in March. And if he'd left in March, he probably would have had armed guards from the Taliban letting him go. You know, everybody would have been happy to get rid of him. Instead, he bombed and attacked Taliban sites and things for 5 months, made it his war, and then decided to leave on you know, in September. He was talking about leaving on September 11th, for God's sakes. The newspapers and the television news never reported that there was absolutely no purpose to this war from the beginning, and that we shouldn't. The real issue was never how do we leave. It was, why the hell did we go there in the first place? And that's the misreporting, you know. And people talk about, oh, all these poor translators, you know, that got left behind. Well, most of those translators were translating for the American troops to tell them who to shoot, where to drop their bombs, and were helping with interrogations that were brutal and often ended up with the suspect being killed by the American troops. So these were not innocents, you know, people who were helping the soldiers order food in a restaurant. You know, they were part of the war effort, which was an illegal invasion of a foreign country. It had no sanction from the UN. They tell us that it's a NATO effort. What the hell is NATO? It's the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. What does that have to do with Afghanistan on the other side of the world? We don't get that reporting. And that's an example of, you know, people say, why do they hate us? You know, the reason they hate us is because we invade them, we bomb them. That, you know, most of the people in Afghanistan are just want to have peace, and we didn't bring peace for 20 years. They portray it as, you know, oh, what about the women? You know, the women's rights and stuff. Afghanistan hasn't had women's rights for thousands of years, and we didn't do anything about that until we wanted to invade them for something else. It wasn't to give what rights to women.
Right, Dave, that was a brutally frank answer. So thank you so much for being with us this afternoon, and hopefully we'll see the finalized version of your article up on
Yeah.
9/11 or the day later, but I'm really eager to read it again.
Okay, it may take a weekend for me to get it
Sure,
finished.
sure,
Uh,
sure. Thank you so much, Dave.
Thank you.
Okay,
you.
and thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Good luck to all of you.
Yeah, thank you, Dave. Thank you.